Great. Thanks, Jed. Appreciate it. All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all the CityWorks community. It's always a pleasure to have the community together to really come together and share their experiences and how CityWorks enables that. So really, really appreciate carving out a little bit of time today. So, and one way we strive to really contribute to, how you're doing your work, your operations is through these releases. And recently we did have a 15.8 release. Those included, or that release included updates to what most of you are familiar with, most importantly, our platform, also Respond, Style, Admin, Storeroom, Public Access, and the native apps. And I know I pronounce Style pretty funny, so pardon me, I'm from Texas. All right. So that was exciting. Just recently, those releases went out. And just as a reminder, the CityWorks platform really consists of the AMS and PLL components. And so there's various ways that within those you can carry out your operations, your workflows, and whether it be through Office, Respond, or the native apps, you get to choose how you consume those, right? So, but to recall, in recent years, more emphasis has been placed on the platform. And so with new capabilities presented primarily in the HTML5 apps. And so those apps, as a refresher, are here on this slide. And for example, you can dive into Style if you want to use to customize the apps or the look of the different apps, right? But you can also say, well, if I need a certain subset of my field text or my users to only view a set number of fields, which previously in Office, you'd have to go in through the XML. Now that can be done through Style. Very easy, very simple, right? And so that's one way that that can be consumed, but maybe you're taking a look at admin. And so I will say admin has many enhancements that Designer previously did not. And we're continuing to do that, but also know that the goal of admin is really to become the AMS and PLL admin central config, right? And that's where you're going to go if you have both sides of the platform or both components of the platform. You're going to be able to go in there and really configure what is needed, whether it's at the template level, whether it's setting up your plugins, really a way to do that in a more effective manner. And so just wanted to once again show you how those different offerings have really come about. You know, we have the native apps there. Storeroom is one of those first apps that many experience as there was a way to do that in Office, and then the app came along. So let's see here. There we go. Okay. So let's cover the CityWorks roadmap. So what does this really mean? As I mentioned, we just had that 15.8 release. So if we start here on the right-hand side of this slide, you're going to see the different releases that are available. So we have everything from 15.8 to the service packs that are in the 15.7 line. So 15.7.5, 15.6.6. And, you know, one of the nice parts is now the ability to support ArcGIS 10.9.1 for all those who are on the latest Esri platform. So part of those releases, as I mentioned, were part of what we put out just recently, but there are others that have also, the most recent release is still from last fall. So just wanted to call those out there for some of those like workload, operational insights, and OpEx. And so some of these, for example, the guys will take you through in the coming minutes here as to some of the great enhancements that you were asking for. And so you'll get to see what those mean. But as we go through the rest of the roadmap here, so some of the things that we're really excited about, especially that came with 15.8, was the ability to provide new services for areas that previously were lacking some services, such as, so once again, in that investment of our platform. So that is, for example, our projects, being able to have APIs to link up to there. From a storeroom perspective, you're going to see what Brad shows you in terms of serialization. And then on things that are still in the pipeline and we're working on, so such as being able to do some tracing with the utility network. That's some of the utility network is something that you'll hear more about if you haven't already, but some of the things that are being worked on. That tracing widget, I know so many people have been waiting for that, have been asking for that for a while, and so that's currently being worked on, being able to really provide a guided access to public access. That is something that I know, especially during the pandemic, so many found useful to be able to continue our operations in a virtual setting and remotely, still having a way to consume those submittals. And so really having a way to streamline that process through that guided access so that whoever's submitting those really knows what they have to provide. And then there's other things such as something that we're really excited about is, how do we start getting more of that calendar-based reporting through workload, some of how you make your assignments with that calendar view. And so I know that's quite excitement within our group, but at the same time making sure that cybersecurity, just look at the global events of any cyber attacks that are being impacted to communities specifically, making sure that we're staying on top and cutting edge there. So this is just a snapshot of what is currently on our roadmap. But really what that comes down to and what those priorities boil down to are these items here. And so I'm going to hop around from some of these. I want to start out with GIS, right? So our commitment to being the GIS-centric solution, the premier one, will always be top priority, right? We're always going to have our commitment in that, and that is evident in the 15.8 release. So that was the 3D capabilities, the additional map tools, and the support for the utility network, right? And so that's always going to be what we are anchored in and making sure that we're always expanding those capabilities and working in tandem with Esri. So these next two priorities, I'm going to skip over core here for a second, but the next two is really, I know it says office gap and designer gaps, right? But I want you to think about these as two priorities that are really important to supporting your workflows in the HTML apps. And that means really, it's not an office gap, it's a respond gap. And I think if you looked at respond and maybe you dipped your toe in and then said, wait, but I can't do certain, I can't carry out my entire workflow and respond because this feature is missing. We know there are gaps in respond. We know there are gaps in admin, right? As I mentioned previously, we have 2 iterations of admin, and we're starting to provide more and more of those AMS or designer and PLL admin pages in admin. But like I said, the whole goal is to make that central configuration location, regardless of what side of the platform you have, right? Or if you have both. And so the idea is that we need to provide you a way to either work just in admin or if you, rather than going back and forth between designer and admin, right? And so the intent there is a lot of intent and effort going into how we close those gaps. And I say that because we're depending on a lot of usability studies. If you haven't heard about the usability studies, definitely reach out to your CSM, because that is really one way that we are asking for your feedback. We do this at the client level, we do this at the partner level, and that is how, in addition to the ideas that are out there, but also these usability studies, stakeholder groups, that feedback is what's going to make the product better, right? And how we design it in those early stages with your feedback is very critical, and that's where we're really, really relying on those studies and your feedback as we go through it, through our beta program also, right? That's very important, and that's something we want to keep at as an input and a way to inform and guide us. And most importantly, I think many people might not think about it, but really the core platform and investing in that is very similar to, of course, I'm going to be biased on the AMS side, but it is Public Works Week. And I also want to point out that, infrastructure is very important. And when I think about the investment that has to be made in our infrastructure on a national, on a global stage, I also think about that now as we talk about CityWorks and making sure that we're investing into our core platform and staying cutting edge at the highest industry standards that we can, right? And that means expanding capabilities, whether it's continuing to invest in expanding our services, right? So that if that enables more integration in the future, that is possible, but also making sure that any previous work that's been done into it. So, if there's any ways to enhance performance or loading speeds, that we're also doing that. And so as part of that, really investing in core is going to be critical. And that is where we want to make sure that the investment is being done at the platform level, so that can enable AMS, PLL, and all the HTML apps that are part of that, right? And that we're feeding, and that is being used at the native apps level too. So when people are out in the field, that they can easily retrieve their activities and carry out their work to provide the services that at the end of the day, each of us are tasked with from a public level, right? So with that, I want to transition over to the rest of the presentation. So right off the bat, James Oliphant's going to kick us off. And it's really great that we're talking about core platform, because James is actually going to lead us into some of the discussion, some of the industry insights that are really occurring. So I'll turn it over to James Oliphant at this point.